this video, we'll discuss how a sharp descending or beaked nose relates to capacities for being critical and refinement in one's processes. Enjoy. In today's face reading video, we're going to be talking about the nose, and specifically a beaked nose, or what they call a pointing nose or a sharp nose. So if you follow my content, you'll hear me talk about the 5 elements, and you'll be familiar that the nose is a metal element feature. Essentially, it's the largest mountain or metal feature on the face. The nature of metal, if we think about it elementally, and that is the way I want you to think about the elements, you want to think about how they behave and what they can do, because an element's behavior and what they do in an environment is sort of reflective of what those things mean in our lives, because human beings, in theory, are an extension of the natural world. So with all that being said, one of the capacities for metal is to be honed, or to be sharpened, or to be refined. So if we think about some of those themes of what we can do with metal, how metal can be warmed to liquid with heat, and then when it cools, it becomes hard and firm. It's also the basis for technology. So there is sort of a refined, analytical, sharp component to the metal element. You want to think of a sharp sword. So with all that being said, one of the things we can see when a person has a beaked nose, okay, so my nose runs like this a little bit. You can see it sort of has this, as my friends used to say, kind of an aerodynamic nose, a nose that sort of angles down this way. Now, the tip of my nose is not a sharp point, but I do have flared nostrils. So flared nostrils, where things look a little bit more aerodynamic, where things point down a little bit more, one of the components we want to think about is this adage that comes from the metal element. Each of the elements have an edict of sorts. Water is to be cold and to flow downwards, and nature's metal is to be clear and to descend. So metal and water are closely related in the 5-element cycle, but like an axe falling, to be clear and to descend. So when we see a metal feature that has this descending quality, we want to think about the metal metrics in the person's life being a little more accelerated, a little bit more accentuated, a little bit more active and alive. So with the sharp nose, or the beaked nose, right, when the nose does this a little bit, what we're looking at is definitely a sort of pecking nature, which means that the person has a proclivity to peck, analyze, go after, pick at, and can be very critical in their disposition, can be very critical of things and people, and that can be excessive and that can be uncomfortable to be around. But it can also be honed very well to where a person has high computing capacity for very specific things. So for me, I'm not an analytical person, but I do have a strong analytical nature in certain areas. So with the linear things, not so much. Now, in the artistic sphere, when I draw, when I render, I'm very refined. My natural sort of proclivities is to render with a lot of detail. And over the years, I've really tried to get away from that too, to be a little more freeform with my art. But when I study Tai Chi, it's the same thing. Very, very precise. And there's this sort of chipping away quality, like a bird or an eagle with its beak when it picks at prey. The nose behaves like this. So we want to pay attention to the nose in regards to how people approach activities, how they refine their processes, how they approach the refinement of their cooking. Whatever you do that you are into, you want to pay attention to this. If the nose is beaked or sharp, you're going to want to have this sharp edge to some things that you do, because if you don't, it's going to be going a little bit against the natural order according to face reading. So again, the negative side, pecking at things and people too much. The positive side, being very precise and very refined in the pursuits that people have interest in. So again, when we look at facial features, a feature has an associated meaning. It doesn't explicitly mean this about you, hard and steadfast in a contained box. That's the wrong way to think about it. It's saying, here's a shape on an elemental region of the face. Here are the themes of the element. Here are what the features typically say. And your individual personality is going to have to bridge those two things together. So you want to think element and feature, right? They relate. And then personality is in the middle, and it's that bridge between the two. And it's the same adage that they use and the same idea they use in the East, that humanity is an intermediary between the forces of heaven and earth. We blend these energies. The human is the bridge for heaven and earth. And you want to think of your personality like that, in between features and what they mean and the elements they associate to. Big symbolic meaning in the elements: fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And then the specific feature and what features relate to within that elemental context. And again, your individual soul, your individual personality is going to be in the middle of that, and you have to sort of look at those components and find a way to express that well. So face reading is more about looking at theory and seeing, okay, this is what the theory says. How can I plug my life into those things, into these larger constructs? And that's where the creativity comes. That's why I say face reading is not predictive or meant to be psychic in its disposition or in its orientation. It's the wrong way to look at it. But keep this in mind when you're looking at the nose. The nose, again, is the central mountain of the face. It is the bridge between the top and the bottom. So when we see that beaked nose, there's going to be capacity for refinement, analytical and computing capacity, and beauty in the environment. That's another one too, is when the nose is sharped and it is beaked, there's going to be a need typically to refine beauty. So that might be in words, that might be in writing, that might be in artwork, that might be in dance, that might be in cooking. But there's going to be a kind of a pursuit and a search for beauty and how to refine that in some capacity. So again, and for me, it kind of shows up in my art, in my Tai Chi practice, my movement practices. That's where that sharp nose, beaked precision comes in. So I just want you to think about this in relation to your own face, and look at other people's noses. People who have beaked noses and sharp noses, or noses that angle down, and pay attention to their computing power, their analytical capacity, how they pick at things and maybe even people. And this isn't to say someone is good or bad for having this thing, but again, if you understand the features in other people, you understand personality structure a bit better. And that's what all of us are trying to do anyway. We're trying to kind of go through life with not a ton of conflict. We're going to have plenty, believe me. Life brings it. But we don't want excessive conflict, and we don't want things to go unnecessarily poorly. We would like them to go well. And that's what face reading helps you do, at least from a person-to-person level. And if you're using it on yourself, you're going to understand yourself a bit better and have a framework for how to navigate your life better. All right, y'all. Thanks for your time. Take care.